Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. So, in my previous video, I talked about the knights within the Dark Souls series, which if you haven't checked out, do it! No, in all seriousness though, I need to pay my respects to these awesome knights, and I was going to talk about them in that video, but it would have been way too long, so I'm doing it in this one. And considering some of them are my favorite bosses within the whole series, I mean, I felt like I had to talk about them at some point. This is going to be like any top 10 boss video, except I'll only be talking about the knights, or at least my top 10 favorite. So without further ado, fellow friends and family, my name is Josh, and I hope you enjoy the video. At number 10, we have VORDT of the Boreal Valley. Poor guy, not only was he transformed into a beast by Pontiff, but he's really easy to defeat. Dark Souls 3 was my first Dark Souls game, and even then, I did beat VORDT on my first try without knowing much of anything. I gotta say though, besides the easy moveset to counter, the theme for VORDT is really something unique, and I haven't heard it from the other games since then. One of the first themes I've heard from Dark Souls, and I gotta say, like, the second phase is still a personal favorite. The choir is so energetic, and I freaking love it, man. I mean, there really is not much else to say about VORDT besides an easy fight with neat visuals and cool music. Definitely a nice second boss in the entire series for me. At number 9, we have DRAGONSLAYER Ornstein. I never found Ornstein in Dark Souls 2, so the only footage I have of him is with ONS, so please enjoy that footage. Anyways, Ornstein was one of the 4 knights that served under Lord Gwyn, some believing that Ornstein was actually the leader. After the gods left Anor Londo, Ornstein and Smo were tasked with guarding the princess and the cathedral. After some time, however, Ornstein pretty much said, "I'm bored," and went to go search for the Nameless King. I would like to believe that Ornstein sought out Nameless to join him, but it is unclear of what he actually wanted. Besides the really cool backstory, Ornstein by himself really isn't much of a threat, to be honest. But when paired up with the brutal Smo, this iconic duo is certainly one of the toughest bosses I've faced in Dark Souls 1. And really, I feel like it would be a sin to not include Ornstein on this list. He's such an iconic knight that literally slayed dragons and has armor based off of a lion. I admire that even within the game, you can just tell that Ornstein was one of the most respected and feared knights within Anor Londo. His design and attack patterns really portray the pride and honor that he carries. Really good design that partakes in one of the most iconic bosses in Dark Souls. At number 8, we have Dancer of the Boreal Valley. And just like VORDT, Dancer was forced to become a knight under Pontiff and became a mindless warrior soon after. Now, what I really like about Dancer is the tone of her arena and fight. For one, it actually feels like a dance with her graceful, although eerie movements and combos. And that's actually the other thing. The tone of her battle is so creepy. Usually bosses within Dark Souls are really epic and intense, sometimes even really heartbreaking, like when fighting Vendrick or Sif based on their lore. But never have I felt almost a horrific aspect as I have with Dancer. Sure, there are considerably, I guess, horrific or disturbing bosses in Dark Souls, absolutely, I'm not saying there aren't. But I feel like Dancer portrays this oppressive feeling the most. When I first played through this game, I beat her on my second try. Which was honestly a really lucky break for me, because any run after that, she would be pretty difficult. I do, however, always have a really fun time going against her, toe-to-toe with the Dancer, if you want to put it that way. And with the eerie atmosphere, it just makes me love her even more. At number 7, we have VELOSTAOT, the Royal AEGIS. I'm pretty much a huge sucker for really cool and original weapons, and VELOSTAOT's Sacred Chime Hammer is really cool. I love it to death. Now, what makes this knight really fascinating is the lore and the implication of the lore within the game. For those who don't know, VELOSTAOT was the right-hand man to King Vendrick himself, along with another fellow knight, Raim, in which both had conflicting beliefs that led to a mighty duel where VELOSTAOT basically came out victorious and exiled Raim to wherever. Now, within the Undead Crypt, even though both him and the king have become hollowed, he still guards the king's tomb. And the reason why I think this is so fascinating is because literally right after you defeat VELOSTAOT, King Vendrick is right there. Quite an accurate picture of what is literally called a last defense. It's quite a depressing backstory for King Vendrick, and this gloomy atmosphere shines through the duel with VELOSTAOT. It became more depressing the further I went into the crypt, even without knowing the backstory, but when I saw King Vendrick, I was so torn about his fate, and yet the loyalty of VELOSTAOT really shined through as well. It was really cool to kind of witness. Now, as the last barrier between me and the king, all I'm gonna say is that I probably should have kept Ring there, because even though the chime hammer looks cool, he's not hitting me with that thing, alright? There are regular enemies that are way tougher than VELOSTAOT. Besides, it literally just acts like a regular hammer anyway, except for a quick buff and one dark magic attack that's really easy to dodge. I still liked the fight, but I've experienced way better an abundant amount of times. Altogether though, the lore really is the core of what makes me love this knight, and sometimes that's really all you need. On a different twist of fate, the Pursuer is the complete opposite of how I view the VELOSTAOT. The VELOSTAOT? You know what I mean. The Pursuer doesn't really have the greatest backstory or lore, but man, I freaking love just beating the crap out of this knight. When I first started my journey in Dark Souls 2, the Pursuer was my teacher and I was the student, learning about the art of the parry. And luckily for me, he was a really lenient teacher, feeding me very easy attacks to parry. I don't know what it is, but like, I got used to it pretty quickly. I wish I had the first fight recorded because I destroyed this man with the parries. Not only is it fun to parry this knight, but what takes the cake is that if you manage to position him just right, ballistas do almost all the damage for you, which is really cool. I do like the idea of using the weapons in the arena to your advantage, even if they decimate his health bar. It's a nice reward for those who master parrying early on, because I think he's like, what, probably the 3rd or 4th boss for me? I can't remember, but luckily for your boy, I'm really good at Dark Souls, so yeah, he's pretty easy. And when it comes to the lore, like I said, this knight essentially chases those down who bear the undead curse. That's it. I mean, at least he lives up to his name. I do want to mention that really cool epic entrance that the Pursuer has. Not gonna lie, probably one of my favorite cutscenes within Dark Souls 2. Overall, the Pursuer had a really fun fight, and the constant reminder of how easy it is to parry this knight with his multiple clones is always thrilling to go through again. And right at the middle of the pack, we have the Looking Glass Knight. First, I have to mention that this is pretty much the penitent one from Blasphemous, but like without the pointy helmet. Even the thorned sword is common between the two of them. You cannot deny that. However, the mirror shield is not. And dare I say that this shield is one of my favorite shield designs I have ever seen, like ever. I know a lot of people poop on Dark Souls 2, I get it. Okay, I understand. But you can't deny that the Looking Glass Knight looks really cool. And the shield's ability to deflect spells is pretty awesome. Speaking of abilities, after a certain amount of health, this knight basically says, "I need help because I'm a casual," and slams his shield onto the ground, summoning an NPC or a player if they put their sign outside the arena. Now, depending on what you get, this fight has a massive fluctuating range of difficulty, which makes the second phase all the more interesting. The mystery behind getting a good or bad player or even an NPC is a really neat idea, although this, it kind of can't be negated with enough aggressiveness. Like for me, both times when I faced him, like he was almost near dead when he was, you know, slamming his shield on the ground. It really wasn't that difficult to kind of bait it, so yeah. Still, it was a rather neat experience when I first saw him do that. It was pretty, you know, shocking for me. Also, because I can't disregard this point, the Looking Glass Knight has one of my favorite, if not my favorite boss arena in the entire game. I love rain and stormy weather, and actually right now it's raining, so that's kind of ironic, but combining that gloomy weather with a duel at the top of a legendary castle, I mean, what more do you want? It's such a cool arena. Definitely one of my favorite knights and one of my favorite bosses in Dark Souls 2. So, remember Raim? Yeah, after he was kicked out, he basically went all rogue and traveled to the Broom Tower, joined with Nashandra, who's basically this evil Grim Reaper lady, and embraced the dark, transforming him into the Fume Knight, one of the toughest bosses in Dark Souls 2. Well, I mean, at least for the majority of players. Wait. No. 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 No! Really? 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 First try? I'm done. I'm freaking done with this game. No joke. Now, that doesn't mean he's not incredibly difficult, because when I use the bonfire aesthetic, he basically almost one-shotted me with every small combo, which made the fight roughly the difficulty of what I'd imagine other players were experiencing. It's funny because I wouldn't say his combos or attacks were slow or fast. They were kind of like normal speed, which ironically threw me off so much when I faced him for a second time. Also, this is one of the few bosses in Dark Souls 2 that has an actual second phase, where he ditches the longsword and powers up the big one, increasing his damage and range with certain attacks. Now, when it comes to the design, however, best looking knight in my opinion. Even when it comes to the next three, I don't think they are as good, just my personal opinion. And even though his attacks are incredibly strong, forcing almost a near perfect run at some points, I like the idea of dodging all of his attacks flawlessly and countering when I have the chance. And with all the times that I faced Fume Knight, I certainly was surprising myself with how composed I was. Like, I've only used the bonfire aesthetic once, and then besides the other time I faced him when I beat him on my first try, I got accustomed to him really quickly. A treacherous knight who definitely has one of the best designs and best fights from the entire Dark Souls series. The infamous knight Artorias. Now, there are many people who know about the story of his demise saving Sif and not dying as a knight, but rather a hero. Dark Souls 1 does a fantastic job of portraying the lore within the game, and with the help of my fellow peeps during when I streamed Dark Souls 1, I was able to actually experience that. So basically, they told me to fight Artorias and Manus before I fought Sif for the lore, and so I did. Once I did reach Sif, the cutscene communicates that when you saved her from the abyss, she remembers that and mourns her fallen master. It really was a heartbreaking moment. Like, wow, like, it was very powerful. I liked it a lot. Now, I'm not saying that Dark Souls 2 or 3 don't portray their lore very well. Not at all. But Dark Souls 1 I felt was more connected. And Knight Artorias, in my opinion, was the pinnacle of being immersed within this iconic series because I love his backstory so much. Even after you defeat him, a small grave with an NPC appears that arrives to pay their respects. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've read that it's like his lover or something, I'm not sure. But basically, she's there to mourn his death. He really is like the local hero that everyone loved and looked up to. And tying his story with other bosses, like, you just can't beat that. Not to mention that good lore just makes the fight itself all the more memorable and fun. Not that he really needed that, because Artorias is a really fun fight. He wasn't like super difficult, like he was one of those bosses that had a very aggressive nature that I feel like I could counter very well. Which goes the same for Fume Knight, Ludwig, and a couple others. I just thrive in very aggressive arenas, I guess. What I do hate though is Gravelord Nito. He's not really aggressive, but the skeletons are, and like, why would you put minions in a freaking boss arena? Regardless, he still can take me a few tries before I take him down. What with the heavy sword swings and combos that don't necessarily happen every single time. Take for example his parkour sword slam. Artorias can perform this attack 1 to 3 times, and knowing when he will stop is difficult, and it really baits the player into playing a more passive playstyle. But for me, he's kind of like Ludwig. I can dodge his attacks pretty well, but one wrong move and I'm either close to dead or it's back to the bonfire. For Dark Souls 1, this was a dramatic change of pace, and it certainly was something I did not prepare for, not at all. It really feels like Artorias he doesn't belong in Dark Souls 1 mechanically wise. Like, he feels very smooth, and I love that. Overall, Artorias is a perfect character with amazing lore and a stunning boss fight. But there are still 2 more knights that I deem better than this iconic Abyss Walker. At number 2, we have, I mean, come on, if I wasn't going to include Slave Knight GAEL, I might as well not have made this video in the first place. When it comes to Slave Knight GAEL, it is an all-out war between 2 of the biggest losers in Dark Souls history. This old geezer and me. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. The core factor when it comes to choosing my favorite knights is the entertainment aspect and how much fun it is to actually duel that knight, followed shortly by the characterization and lore. Like, it's neck and neck. GAEL is arguably the toughest boss in the entire series, and whenever I face him, it is a rush of blows and clashes, making it without a doubt one of my favorite fights in all of gaming, for sure. The first phase is a more controlled state, GAEL being more animalistic in combat than an honorable knight. The second phase does a complete 180, with GAEL standing upright using spells, I guess just one spell, new combos, a repeater crossbow, and a really neat mechanic that has his cape follow up with all of his sword swings, therefore increasing his range and damage. Now, the reason I chuckled a little bit is because I'm remembering the first time I went up against Slave Knight. Like, I felt like it was an entire war, an entire army, like, combined into one man. Like, everything was going on. The huge sword swings, the cape swings, the repeater crossbow, the spells, and the third phase, which isn't as noticeable, but it initiates the first time GAEL releases an unholy amount of souls from his body that not only track the player, but when they land, they summon lightning from the sky, I guess. I mean, it's cool, so I'm not really mad about it, but there's also that to work around. Now, many people know about GAEL's lore, and if you don't, just let me keep things simple. The painter of the New World needed the Dark Soul as a pigment for her painting, in which Uncle GAEL went to go search for, so he found these crusty old pygmy lords that harbored the Dark Soul, but their dried blood made it useless. And so, in a desperate attempt to retrieve it, he didn't ask them kindly, he didn't try to negotiate, he freaking killed them, and he basically drank their blood, which corrupted him, and he knew it was gonna happen, and then poof, best boss in Dark Souls 3. It really is a tragic story that represents the slave part of his name. It's a very interesting concept indeed. However, there is still one more knight that I consider to be the best boss knight in Dark Souls. And taking the #1 spot, we have Sir Alonne. What an incredible fight this ninja samurai knight was, especially for Dark Souls 2. Sir Alonne is yet another one of my favorite fights in Dark Souls 2, although he does have a Dark Souls 2 flaw, and that is the absolutely terrible run to his arena. Seriously, this is even worse than the Blue Smelter Demon. I know people hate that one, but in my opinion, Sir Alonne has the worst run-up. I hate it. Especially those stupid regular Alonne knights. They suck so much. But besides the run-up to the boss, I can't say there is really anything wrong with Sir Alonne and his fight. A good pace with fair difficulty, a beautiful arena. Again, one of my favorites of the game. And let me tell you that I just noticed how wondrous his theme is. And wow, certainly one of my favorite tracks, perhaps in the entire Dark Souls series. It's really good. His fight has this sort of back and forth type of motion, like a seesaw. You wait for attacks you can counter and strike back. And I know that sounds like a lot of boss fights, pretty much the entire franchise, but it feels very smooth when fighting this knight. During, I believe it was my second attempt though, I almost killed him without taking a single hit, which would have resulted in a special death animation where he commits seppuku, which is like a ritual suicide. Now, because I like perfection, I, of course, use a bonfire aesthetic, and I went through, as much as I hate the run to him, I went through it a few times, and I actually, after, I would say 40 minutes, I actually beat him without taking any hits, and I got the legendary animation of him committing suicide. We did it! Yes! Mom! The thing I love about his fight is that it's not too flashy. A legendary duel between a loyal knight that once served the Great Iron King and a small YouTuber. No, but when reading up on the lore, I discovered something very interesting. So we encounter Sir Alonne in the memories of the old Iron King, and we know that when we tamper with the past, the present reality is affected, a good example being the Giant Lord. Sir Alonne was known for his loyalty, and the knights that he trained under the Iron King's command carried out this reputation of loyalty. However, during the peak of the king's reign, Sir Alonne disappeared without a trace, many speculating that he simply left once he saw the king's descent into madness. But since we travel back in time, killing the king's most trusted knight, it is theorized that Sir Alonne didn't leave, but rather we killed him and started this whole movement leading to the king's gruesome end. Like, I don't know about you, but that is phenomenal lore and story writing. I love that, regardless if Sir Alonne left himself or if we were the ones who caused it. Now, when I discovered this theory that I honestly believe to be true, it just makes too much sense. I was blown away. That's such incredible lore behind a knight and a kingdom he once protected. Like, I love that so much. I know I said that the fight, the entertainment part of it was very important, actually the core idea of ranking these knights, but Sir Alonne and his backstory, he's just too similar to what a realistic knight would be like. Not saying that the other ones aren't, but hearing this backstory, like, I had to put him as number 1. I had to. Even with Sir Alonne's disappearance, his legacy continues with the old Iron King naming his Iron Knights after his trusted friend. Hence why, you know, they're called Alone Knights. And then after some time, he actually tried to recreate his best friend through the Smelter Demon, which then brought up the demise of the king. Phenomenal. Absolutely amazing lore and backstory. I love it when games have this twist, and when we have affected something to catastrophic proportions without even knowing it. Great lore, exhilarating fight, an amazing design, and a really cool theme and arena that makes Sir Alonne my favorite knight in the Dark Souls series. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow friends and family, thank you so much for watching today's video. To give you guys a little bit of an update, yes, I'll be playing Bloodborne, live streaming it every now and then. I don't know when, I don't have a big schedule up going. I have that going on. I'll be doing more top 10s like this for the Dark Souls franchise, so like my top 10 favorite lords or kings in the series, my top 10 favorite demons, and I'll do the same thing when it comes to the enemy versions as well. Top 10 favorite dragons, or 5 I guess, because there's not that many. But you get what I'm saying. So stay tuned for that, and before you go, tell me about your favorite knights within the franchise as well. I would love to hear about that. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care everyone, and stay safe.